So we find ourselves in the midst of a debilitating pandemic and facing an acute shortage of vaccines. So we're joined by Mr. Murli Neelkantan, someone who's worked closely at the intersection of law and healthcare, to give us a perspective on the law and policy related to development and distribution of vaccines. Uh, Mr. Neelkantan, thank you so much for joining us. Um, just from a broader perspective, what role do IP laws play in, hampering the production of vaccines on a large scale in a country like India?
I think we have to look at the IP landscape much beyond India, because production of vaccines is not a national process. You take any of the vaccines that are in the market today, they're a result of cooperation across borders. So it is an original patent in perhaps a university, either UPenn or Oxford. It is then given to a multinational company on a license. That company then uses some other patents and some other technology to put together the vaccine. Those products, the raw materials, consumables, the equipment, all has patents around it in different parts of the world. Then those products all come together and we create a vaccine. Then it is exported somewhere else to be filled and finished and then exported. So it's really a global enterprise. It's not so much about what patents are there in India as much as, for example, can you get the raw materials? So if you have patents on those raw materials in India, then there'll be a barrier to producing them in India. So the patent landscape is not so much about just the vaccine, but about the whole process of production, including the equipment. There may be patent on the equipment that is necessary to produce a vaccine. Then what do you do with it? So IP plays a very important role in creating these barriers. It means that people are going to be reluctant to get in and try and do it when there is such a complexity of patents. In India, it is particularly harsh because we don't have a collection, a clearly defined list of patents attaching to vaccines, unlike the US. So whether it is vaccines or it is just plain drugs, there is a listing in the US FDA of all the patents attaching to a product. So if I want to produce a product, I can look at the Orange Book and say, these are the patents, and how do I get over them, or how do I license them? We don't have that in India, sadly. So the first task is to just figure out what the patents are. All through the process, each of the intermediate products, the raw materials, the consumables, there will be so many things involved in it. And so it's a nightmare for Indians in India to just figuring out what the landscape is. What does the maze look like? So that is a challenge in India, and that has a very chilling effect on development of products.
Just on the topic of the shortage that we're facing, in India, it takes 4 to 6 years to get a patent in the first place. So what stops a company from just going out there and producing a vaccine without a license?
It's a very good question. So the patents, as I said, in India are not just on the vaccine itself, on the vaccine product. So the vaccine was developed in 2020. All the patents attaching to the product itself, even if they were filed in 2020, we would not know of it because they haven't yet been published. So your first challenge is we don't know what those patents are for the product itself. There are earlier patents which relate to a lot of other things. For example, the technology itself, the process itself, the intermediates, the raw materials. So anyone who decides to go ahead and say, I'll take the risk and launch, first problem is that they are likely to get sued in India fairly quickly. Courts have been granting injunctions. And so there is a huge risk for anyone who develops, invests in manufacture, produces a vaccine, brings it to market, and the day before launch, an injunction is granted. And then you spend a lot of time fighting this through the legal system. So there is a big risk. And that's the reason why a lot of innovators, a lot of Indian companies will be very reluctant to take that risk. It's an investment which could eventually end up with the courts granting an injunction. Then what do you do with all that? So that is a big risk in India.
Right. So you're saying that even in a pandemic situation, courts will be will grant injunctions to?
Well, the pandemic is unprecedented, right? So I don't know how courts will behave during pandemic. But in the past, we've seen that courts have been willing to grant injunctions, even though my own personal view is that there should not be injunctions granted on drugs and medicines. It's after all a matter of money. So process should be to look at the CPC, which says what is the balance of convenience. Clearly, it is in getting more drugs into the market. What is this irreparable loss? After all, it's money. So there is no irreparable loss. Unfortunately, courts have disagreed with me on it, but that should have been the jurisprudence to say, we will not grant injunctions, let the product come to market. If there is an infringement, whatever the damages are, whatever the royalties need to be paid, we can agree that at the end of the trial. That should have been the process to ensure access to health in India. Sadly, that view has been a minority. But I hope things will change, and we may see some jurisprudence that is more encouraging of access to health.
What do you think are the gaps in India's existing vaccination policy, and how can these be remedied on short notice?
Well, it's a bit of a surprise to me because we have 50 years of really good and successful immunization. The program that India has developed over 50 years is what the rest of the world is using today, which is universal free vaccination. Even the global health bodies are encouraging countries to use it. So it's become the standard, it's become the template for the rest of the world. We started on that in January to say we will have universal free vaccination, which is center procures the vaccine, gives it free to the states give it to the people, largely free. There was a part of it where you could pay for it, a small price to pay for it, 250 rupees, but largely it was free. Now, in the middle of the second wave, we changed this policy. And the ostensible reason is we have liberalized it. Now, what is the consequence of that? What has that meant? It means that now there is more than 30 markets, which is the 29 states, the private healthcare providers, corporates. Everybody has a chance to basically bid for those vaccines at varying prices, which means as patients, we may now have a situation where we are paying a variety of prices, and we're already seeing that. Even within the same city, take Bangalore, for example, the same hospital chain has different prices for the same vaccines in Bangalore, depending on the locality. Now, why is there an issue with that? If people can pay, they should pay. Once you have markets with different prices, the incentive on manufacturers will be to get the greatest price. The incentives on service providers will be to sell at the highest price. So there will be a diversion from the public market, which is free and subsidized vaccines, to the private market. And we've already seen that in the last 2 weeks. We were at one stage vaccinating 25 lakhs per day. We're not even doing half that in the last 2 weeks. So as soon as the policy was announced, what did the market do? It withdrew product from the market, waited for 1st of May to happen, and then now it is available in the private healthcare centers and not available in the public market. So a policy like this has caused effectively a duopoly of manufacturers of a scarce product to command who will get the vaccine. Earlier, the center decided the states will get it. I'm still not sure what the basis of that allocation by the center was. And that's before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's asked the question, tell us how you allocated the vaccines. But be that as it may, we may be able to find an answer to that. But how do you hold a private manufacturer responsible for what the criteria is to give it to a corporate hospital or to a corporate organization or to states? It's completely opaque. We can't hold them to account, and they don't have a duty to be equitable, whereas the center has a duty to be equitable. So what we've done is create effectively crony capitalism in the name of liberalization. To me, that is the consequence. The consequence is now being felt by us. I can't get a vaccination. My mother can't get a vaccination. She's over 60. I'm over 45. I can't get vaccinated. I've been searching the CoWIN portal for 2 weeks now, and I can't find a slot. So that is the reality of it.
There's been a lot of talk about the TRIPS agreement and waivers under the same. How does that work, and what is the time frame within which such a waiver can take effect, if at all, it happens?
We expected the US to make an announcement regarding the waiver. The waiver proposal was originated by India and South Africa last year, in October last year. It's largely political to state that TRIPS allows us flexibilities. The Doha Declaration says public health is important. All this says is, let's all agree that that event has occurred. The events that we contemplated in the TRIPS agreement and in the Doha Declaration have now happened. Why is it important to acknowledge that? So that countries do not use TRIPS and the WTO to take retaliatory measures if a country decides that it will issue licenses, compulsory licenses, or government non-commercial use licenses. So this is just to prevent a fallout in international trade as a result of measures that countries will take for public health. Now, the text that India and South Africa put out is quite wide, because it includes not just patents, but also technology and know-how. It includes all forms of IP. So they could be copyright issues, they could be trademark issues, there could be lots of issues. So it's much wider. It goes beyond just vaccines. So it includes PPE, it includes equipment that is used for diagnosis, it's equipment that's used for treatment, it's equipment that's used for manufacture. It also includes essential drugs for the treatment of the disease. So you can't say I will have a patent waiver for vaccines, but those who are already infected should just die. So the waiver actually is quite broad. The US announcement is limited to IP on vaccines. So my own view is that India and the global South need to hold firm and say, no, it's not good enough. It can't be just patents. It can't be just vaccines. It has to be all of IP. It has to be everything that is needed to deal with COVID. In terms of timelines, it's very hard to tell. It's not likely to happen in weeks. There is a meeting of the WTO in November, December. So I'm hoping at least before that, this will happen. But frankly, the signaling has been done by the US. So if India wants to go ahead and issue licenses, it should feel quite confident that it will be supported by the United States and a majority of the countries in the WTO.
Right. And the Supreme Court recently also asked the center to consider invoking Section 92 of the Patents Act. Do you think this is a feasible solution, and what are the sort of the barriers to implementing it?
Well, it is necessary. It is easy to do. It just takes one notification, which takes, if you send it to me, I will send it back to you in less than 20 minutes, what that notification has to be. The issue simply is the central government is too meek. It is so scared that some country somewhere will do something that will affect its trade globally. I think now, after the 301 report of the United States Trade Representative, which was released on 30th April, which made it clear what the US stand was, which is that there is a pandemic, compulsory licenses are appropriate, and governments can go ahead and issue it. So we had a hint of the announcement when the special 301 report was released. Now I think India doesn't have to remain meek. It can go ahead and issue these licenses. Now, it can issue licenses under 92. It can issue licenses by notification under 100. So there are two separate provisions, of one during an epidemic, secondly for government use. So both are possible. And I think it can go further, which is under 102, it can revoke licenses, revoke patents. So the threat that if you do not do a tech transfer, your patent will be revoked is a credible threat. Brazil has already said it. So that, I think, is a nudge that will encourage a lot of patentees to start licensing by themselves. We've seen that in the past when the first compulsory license and really the only compulsory license was issued in India. Suddenly, there were a series of voluntary licenses after that because a lot of companies felt the threat of a compulsory license. I think if we issue a few licenses under 92 and 100, it requires just a notification, nothing more than that. And an announcement that if tech transfer isn't done, there is the flexibility or the power to issue notification under 102, then we will find quite a lot of companies will start licensing voluntarily. And then we may achieve the desired objective without having to issue compulsory licenses. In terms of actual production, Covaxin is a product that is available, is a vaccine that was developed with the government. The government owns IP on it. It can issue it to anyone. And my own suggestion has been that please make it available free and offer free tech transfer to anybody in the world who wants it, including Indian players. We have vaccine capacity in India that is not utilized. Utilize that now and give it to the rest of the world. If you make this offer, it will shame the rest of the world into then following behind us. So it's a chance for us to take leadership of the global south. We had it. A lot of the TRIPS flexibilities happened because India took a strong stand at the WTO to get these flexibilities. Unfortunately, after having this fantastic power, we've not used it. And so it looks very meek if you have a power and don't use it. It just makes you feel as if you're not confident enough to use it. So I think if India does these two things, makes a notification and offers free licenses, then we'll get back leadership of the global south. Lots of countries around the world will feel confident to go ahead and do the same thing. Finally, under 26B of the Drugs Act, the central government can direct production of vaccines. So vaccine manufacturers may be reluctant to start for the reasons I mentioned earlier, patents, litigation, all of these things. It can issue a direction to all vaccine manufacturers to say, start producing 2 vaccines, Covishield and Covaxin. At the least, start producing Covaxin because there are no IP issues. So we can utilize the capacity and we can get that done fairly quickly. Even for the AstraZeneca vaccine, Covishield, the tech transfer only took a couple of weeks. And then we had a product out in less than 6 months after that. So it's not as if it's going to take a really long time. In terms of real dates, the agreement between AstraZeneca and Serum Institute was signed on 4th June. I have a label for a product in the market in October. So that's 4 months. So it is possible to get something done very quickly and at scale in India. We have the ability to do it.
Would that be the best way to go about doing it? I mean, given the acute shortage we have, would that be the fastest and best way to go about doing scaling up production, or are there other sort of ways to do it?
I think we have to use a combination of these. So license Covaxin to all those PSUs and other entities that don't have a license. So what's happened in the last year is some of the vaccine manufacturers have licenses from others. So there is a license from Sputnik, for example. There is a J&J license done. So some of these are already in the process of being utilized. The capacity is being utilized, but there's still some capacity left. So you should encourage these products to be manufactured in those facilities. So in addition to Covishield, Covaxin, Sputnik, J&J, are there others that can be licensed and manufactured? Can these be licensed to more entities for the manufacture to happen? So we need to do a combination of these, depending on what the facility is, what the availability of raw materials is. We can also increase production of raw materials in India. So certain raw materials need to be imported. Can we think about indigenization of those raw materials and consumables in India? How long will that take? Now we're expecting this pandemic to last until next year at least, because we will not get vaccination done this year. And there is a likelihood that we might need a 3rd dose, which means we are late into next year by the time, best case scenario, everybody gets 3 doses of the vaccine. So thinking that it's going to take 3 months and then the pandemic will go away is just the wrong way of looking at it. what is the worst case scenario? If we do all of this, we will have more capacity, we will have more vaccines than we need, and we can export it. So there is no downside to this whole exercise. I think it will be money wasted. This is not money wasted. This is money invested. So a combination of these, I think, will be the only way out. If we don't do this, then there is a risk that we will have many dead. If you look at the data at the moment, our rate of infection is higher than our rate of vaccination, which means that unless the rate of vaccination improves dramatically, we're already falling behind. So there is a big risk that we may never be able to catch up. And so we may have more infections than people vaccinated very soon. If that happens, then we've lost control of the pandemic. Then we are in God's hands, and we can prevent it.
I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon.